Todd, and if you can just do some pre-game chatter for me, we'll get that balanced.
Pre-game chatter.
Pre-game chatter. Chatter.
Yeah, it was interesting when the playoff, when they were ranked last night, when they came out, how everyone was so angry at 11 through 25, and I told someone the other day, I said, none of this. There's only about 8 or 9 teams right now that are really they're going to be impact for for the playoff. I mean, you think about it. There's only 8 or 9 teams. There's not once you get past those 8 or 9.
Oh, hi there.
Hi there.
Just telling my friends to watch us on Facebook Live, just like you can right now. And you can also reach us on Twitter. We have some Twitter questions coming in. My name's Brant Parsons with Matt Murschel, as we are here every Wednesday at 3:30 talking college football. As the season rolls on, it is...
it's 11 weeks.
It is heated up. It's
we are
3 weeks left of regular season before
Where did the
conference.
time go? It feels like the time just blew by this season, didn't it?
Well, you're already working on 2017, so...
You're going to let them know that I'm already starting my 2017 rankings.
2017 preview. But before we get there, we're going to talk about the games this weekend. And Matt, no games that stick out this weekend. We're going to talk about them. We got a couple good questions to get to, but there are no games, I think, at least heading into Saturday or into the weekend, that can define the season, barring a crazy upset weekend.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, this is one of those weekends where I think there are just a lot of games, conference games that teams have to get out of the way as they move forward. But as you mentioned, there's some games that, barring any sort of upset, we could see. I think where things will start to heat up is in the next week or two. We'll start seeing games like Ohio State, Michigan, crucial key games like that, Alabama, Auburn, those kind of matchups that are at the end of the year, which could really play up to. Although I think USC Washington is probably the biggest key game that we're going to talk about later that really may have an impact on the top 4.
And that is a great segue right there, because we're going to open up actually with the rankings that came out last night. While everybody was watching the other thing that was going on, the rankings came out, and they were able to right a wrong thanks to an upset last weekend. But the top 4, as expected now, Alabama, Clemson, Michigan, Washington, right on the outside, Ohio State, Louisville, and then right on the outside of that, Wisconsin and Texas A&M, which surprisingly only dropped 4 after that loss. Auburn, Penn State finished out the top 10, but this was a correction, if you will, because everybody was upset that Texas A&M was 4 over Washington, an undefeated team out in the Pac-12, one of the best defenses in the country. They're undefeated, but they're also good. But when A&M lost, they were able to fix it. So the committee at least got that right for people. Do you think they have it right now?
I think they do at this point. I mean, you look at the undefeated teams that are in the mix. I think there was, they joke about when an official Washington got in there. My mock ranking that I thought Ohio State would have jumped in that spot just because of their impressive win over a number 10 ranked Nebraska at the time. I thought that was enough to get him in there as well. But the committee felt like Washington being undefeated for what they were able to do really they deserved to be at number 4. We'll be interested to see this week if number 4 spot becomes a precarious place to be, considering the fact that Texas A&M, which was number 4 in the first rankings, lost to an unranked Mississippi State team. Washington faces a USC team that is red hot. If they were to lose that game, then no one wants to be at number 4. But you still have Ohio State at 5, as you mentioned, probably the best one-loss team. I think Louisville would argue they're probably the best one-loss team is there as well. And as I was mentioning before as we came in live, I really only think there's maybe 7 or 8 teams right now that have a viable impact to the playoff spot. So it's crucial to see how these games play out in the next couple weeks.
And of course, Ohio State sitting there at 5, the team at 3 is the team they finish the year with.
Yeah.
Whoever wins that game obviously gets a bigger foot into the door, but not a whole lot of fireworks even in the rankings. It's just one of those weeks.
No, and I think but there are still some debate points moving forward. I mean, Bobby Petrino, Louisville coach, had after they beat Boston College last week, kind of went on a rant about how maybe he felt like he should have kept his starters in longer against Florida State, and they could have put 80 up on Florida State, which they easily could have. The idea of margin of victory, I think the playoff committee wanted to squash that idea this week and say, listen, that's not what we want to see happen. They don't want to see coaches go out and try to put up 80 points a game against inferior competition. They want to make sure that this is still good for them to see them get to the point where we're seeing 80 or 90 points being scored against bad competition.
All right, we're going to rush through games today. We've got a bunch to talk about, but we agree on everything.
Imagine that. We agree on
Crazy.
everything.
It's kumbaya moment. And we have a couple side topics I want to get to, but let's just rush through the state teams here. Starting off with Boston College at Florida State, a Friday night game, 7:30 start on ESPN2. The second ever game for Florida State on a Friday night at home. They've actually played 32 Friday night games, but only the second time they've done one in Tallahassee. Florida State's bowl eligible for the 35th straight season. They also have the nation's longest active streak of games without back-to-back losses at 72, which is obviously hard to do, and they've been able to do that when they came back to beat NC State. Florida State comes in this game. You would have to think an easier game, but Boston College traditionally gives Florida State a little bit of fits. Florida State, third hardest schedule in the NCAA this year. They've earned their stripes this year, even if they haven't gotten the wins to prove it. I think Florida State's going to beat Boston College, but Boston College, one of those annoying teams for whatever reason against Florida State. The defense always seems to play well against Florida State. Yeah,
Boston College came into last week's showdown with Louisville as one of the best defenses in the ACC. Left that game, obviously, not being the best defenses after Louisville put up a bunch of points. I think this team is definitely a team they want to watch out for if you're Florida State going into this game, because again, this is a team that's wounded, that's coming off a bad loss. They need the offense to step up and start making plays. That's been the concern for Steve Adazio's team this year. Even though they made a change at offensive coordinator, they made a change with a quarterback with Patrick Towles coming in. This offense has not looked anything like the offense you need to be able to do. I think Florida State wins this game. I think what Jimbo Fisher needs to do is keep his players focused. They still say, listen, we need to move forward. We've got some good bowl games that we can be keeping our eye on. We want to finish strong. And you've got a lot of young players right now, DeAndre Francois, for instance, who need to grow and mature and finish what they started because they're going to start looking forward to next season.
UCF returns or stays at home. They play Saturday against Cincinnati, 12 o'clock kickoff on ESPNU. Last year, this game, 52-7 Cincinnati. A little bit different this year.
And Tommy Tuberville wants to make sure get a job.
And get a job. So. Yeah, we could do a whole show on Tommy Tuberville. UCF, though, 0-12 last year. New coach. They have 5 wins. They are a win away from being bowl eligible. We'll touch upon that in just a second after our prediction. Last year in this game, Cincinnati racked up over 700 yards as whole offense. That's not going to happen this year. But Cincinnati has rebounded a bit. They've settled in with Gunnar Kiel at quarterback. He's accounted for over 600 yards passing, 6 touchdowns in his last 3 games. UCF's defense, though, 3 touchdowns last weekend, school record in their win over the Green Wave. I have UCF winning this game, and I think I'm comfortable. I'm very confident in picking UCF to beat Cincinnati in this game. I think they're the better team. They're showing it, and they're going to be bowl eligible by around 3:30 on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, they should be. I think UCF wins this game. I think the defense has played outstanding. I felt like going into this year, I think we talked about it many, many times, I felt like if UCF was at a 5-win, 6-win type area going into this season, that would be a huge accomplishment for Scott Frost's team, just because the amount of talent that the team was kind of lacking in certain spots, and that they were making a transition from a new coaching staff with a new offense, a new defensive scheme, all those factors going in here. It's been impressive. And the fact that it looks like they're going to get their 6th win. I think to do that, though, they need to continue to eliminate those turnovers. I think they need to continue to eliminate penalties. Those have been some of the concerns forward. But Drigo Johnson last week with a fumble recovery for a touchdown and with an interception for a touchdown has been playing outstanding. I think this defense is only getting better and better. I think that's why they win this game on Saturday.
And as I said, we do have a Twitter question. Handle. We'll skip that part. He asked, what bowl is UCF going to? How can we get the Cure Bowl? Win one more game in your game. And I talked about this off camera. UCF, with a win, they're bowl eligible. If they finish with 8 wins, obviously I think they move up the bowl pecking order. The Cure Bowl, once UCF, they should win.
I'm sure they would love to have UCF.
That would be a great pickup for them. I think it's a good bowl for UCF, 5-7. APR, UCF, one of the highest up there. They'd be one of the first to get a bowl.
Yeah, I think that's a good prediction. I think, the Cure Bowl being its 2nd year, here in Orlando. I think it would love to have the opportunity to bring a UCF team, especially an exciting UCF team, with the offense and the defense they've been able to do, the enthusiasm that Scott Frost has brought to this program. I think it would be great to have them there. I think they would help out with attendance as well. I think, as you mentioned, you getting a team like a Georgia Southern from the Sun Belt would be huge for them. Also adds a little storyline. Tyson Summers, Georgia Southern coach, used to coach at UCF a couple of years ago, and I think there's some interest there as well. So, again, somewhere where a school could drive maybe down and take part in this bowl game, play their way out of it. If they lose bowl teams.
Cure Bowl. South Carolina, Florida, a Saturday afternoon game, a 12 o'clock kickoff. We've got news today. Austin Appleby will start at quarterback for the Gators. Felipe Franks is the in. They're on a 3-game. They beat Missouri last weekend. And, of course, this whole story, the return of Will Muschamp to Gainesville, leading the South Carolina Gamecocks. And it's a nice side story, but the real story here is this Gators football team. The offense is bad. It's very bad. And
and actually, this game features two of the worst offenses in the SEC.
It's going to be tough to watch, but we've been talking about it. I've been talking about it. When you keep counting on the defense to support you, they're going to have a bad game. It happened against Arkansas. They were never in it. It just, once it started spiraling and the defense was getting beat everywhere, you just knew Florida wasn't going to come back, and they didn't. Now Appleby gets the start with Luke Del Rio out injured. I'm taking the Gators against South Carolina because they are at home and because that defense is so good. But it's a crapshoot now what Florida team you're going to get, because the offense is just so bad. You don't know how much the defense is going to.
I mean, when this game came on, Florida was a 15-point favorite. In fact, I had 15-point favorite. That number has obviously gone down since Luke Del Rio was announced that he was hurt and wasn't going to play, and Austin Appleby's in there. But it still was a double-digit plays. I think Austin Appleby's team has got to find a way to win games.
A special talent out there in San Diego.
And a side note, a huge tennis shoe collector has a huge collection of shoes when I talk to him.
And that's why you get paid the big bucks. Thanks, Greg.
Yes, Greg. That's a good point. He was. We need to mention him.
We mentioned at the beginning of the show that there weren't any big national games this weekend that stand out, but I do want to go through 4 real quick ones. USC at Washington. That's the Fox primetime game on Saturday at 7:30. Washington's 12-game win streak is the second longest in the country. They are number 2 in the country in scoring offense, number 11 in scoring defense. They lead the FBS in turnover margin and pass efficiency. This just seems like the game for Washington. USC, maybe not the year you expected from USC. All 3 of their losses, though, have been on the road. 2 top 25 teams. Well, they're going on the road against a top 25 team. But you think, I mean, we're both picking Washington, but you think USC could give them some fits this weekend?
Oh, I think they will. I mean, I think USC started out really bad. They lost to Alabama in the season opener, in Dallas. They looked not so great. They made a change at quarterback. They decided to go to Sam Darnold, the freshman. He's been outstanding so far. Their defense is starting to step up. I think they had 11 sacks during this past five-game win streak. They looked so much better now. They look like a team that's actually could compete for the Pac-12 South. I think this is a trap game for Washington. I like Washington winning the game. I think it's going to be close. I think USC is going to give them fits because, again, outside of USC and Washington State, those are the last 2 challenges Washington's going to have going in, if they're going to keep themselves perfect in the playoff. Because I think if they lose this game, I think it's going to be awful tough to see a Pac-12 team get back in the championship unless they win out the remainder of their games and unless, someone else falters, because that's how tight it is, I think, in the top 5 or 6 spots.
If they lose this game, you're going to see a conference with 2 teams in the playoff, because I think the Big 12 is out, and that would possibly knock the Pac-12 out. Speaking of the Big 12,
no, you're good.
West Virginia, though, has won 4 straight games against top 12 ranked teams. It's a weird stat, but Texas, for whatever reason, has showed up for big games. Mm-hmm. And granted, Notre Dame maybe not as good as they were when Texas beat them, but they did it to Baylor. They show up for these big games. They get West Virginia at home. I wanted to pull the trigger on Texas, but I'm taking West Virginia in this one. Skylar Howard at quarterback is just able to make things happen. The defense is better than it's been under Dana Holgorsen there. West Virginia gets it done at Texas, but this Longhorn team, you don't know what you're going to get. And if the good Longhorn team shows up, there could be a long day for West Virginia.
Well, we saw, Deontay Foreman, the running back for Texas, had a monster day last week, over 300 yards. Really was the reason why Texas won that game. I think Charlie Strong, as much as we figure he's on the hot seat, I think a lot depends on who's available for Texas right now. If they were to somehow pull out the win here this weekend, if they were to beat West Virginia, if they were to continue to do the things that they're doing, win out the rest of their games, I think it's going to be awful hard for players. Shane Buechele, their star quarterback, has done an amazing job as well. I agree with you. I think West Virginia wins this game. I think West Virginia still feels like it has a legitimate shot at possibly, getting the Big 12 championship. I think they pull us out, but I think this is going to be a tough-fought game. It could be a close game as well, but I think the Mountaineers pull it out at the very end.
The road is tough heading in for West Virginia the rest of the way, with Oklahoma still looming and Baylor. Michigan at Iowa. 8 p.m. kickoff. Michigan comes in this game. They have a balanced offense. They're averaging 251, 245 running and passing. They're not turning the ball over, and this is not the same team that has lost 3 straight games in Iowa to the Hawkeyes. Michigan's going to win this game. The question is just by how much. Iowa let me down last weekend when I thought they were going to give Penn State a game, and Iowa on Saturday.
You need to continue to focus, let a team like a crowd. Give him some of that high.
Oklahoma going for their 14th straight win in conference play. This game looked a lot better 2 weeks ago before the wheels came off for Baylor. Maybe you shouldn't wear jerseys in honor of Art Briles at home and not have the football gods get you. TCU blew out Baylor, but Oklahoma, I think, coming into form, maybe they're the team we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year. I don't think this game is going to be close. I think Oklahoma right now might be the best team in the Big 12, and if they hadn't started off the year with those 2 losses to Houston, Ohio State would be in the thick, obviously, but people would be considering them one of the top 4 teams in the country the way they're playing now, and I think they're going to beat Baylor.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma wins this game convincingly. You and I talked about, beginning of the season. One of the reasons I did, we're seeing some of their players having issues. We're seeing there's so much off-the-field distractions being asked about going on with the whole shirts and everything like that. I think, honestly, this is what I expected to happen from Baylor. I think once they got that loss last weekend, I think they figured it was over with. I think you're going to see Oklahoma win this game. I think you're seeing it win it convincingly. And I think Baylor's just going to kind of stumble into the final couple weeks of the season.
And you got that prediction right. One more Twitter question that we got from Kilroy FSU, and it's a generalized question, playoff rankings. And they, of course, have become kind of the emphasis that we spend a lot of time on. It's a big deal on the nights that it is announced. And his question is, has the playoff destroyed the bowl games?
I think people think that. I don't think so. I think the playoff really, honestly, has been national championship. Some of the higher tier bowl games a little more lucrative, and I think that also makes them more interesting because you have some teams that maybe aren't going to be there, that you normally would have there, because now they're waiting to see what happens with the playoffs. There's a possibility you could have a one-loss team that doesn't make the playoff, falls into a good bowl spot. Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl here in Orlando is a great example of that. Normally they get the top game right after the playoffs in the semifinals, so that helps them out as well. I think the playoff is good. I think there's so much talk about expanding it to go to 8 teams. I think if they do that, I think that's going to hurt the game. I think that's when you start seeing bowl games lose some of their appeal, because once it's an extra game as well, the extra couple games, and 2, because I just think then the good teams really are going to be going to those top premier bowls, the New Year's Six bowls and all that. And I think then the lower bowls won't get to see that opportunity. I think maybe keeping it to 4 or 6 is probably the best shot that they're going to have of doing that. And I think, honestly, when you look back at the BCS, you and I talked about this. The BCS was one of the worst things that, in a way, kind of happened, because all you cared about was the top 2 teams. No one really cared about 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now we're talking about Washington at 4. There's been more discussion about the team at number 4 than there has been about anything else.
If I had to complain about the bowls, it would be conference tie-ins. And I understand why they're there, and it would be complete chaos if it wasn't there. But you're never going to have an SEC Pac-12 meeting in a bowl because they don't have any that are preset. And I do bowl projections, and I'm happy for the Titans because I already spend too many hours every week. And I take a class in the summer just to know where all the things are. But I think that maybe takes away a little bit because it's kind of always the same matchups. It's really tough to get the inner coastal kind of to meetings. But I think the BCS started maybe the decline of the bowl games because there's an emphasis on that game and there's an emphasis on the playoff games. In the past, I can remember bowl seasons, 4 or 5 games had national title implications. The year Miami beat Nebraska, there were all these other games going on. So I think it's been a general kind of degrading of what bowl games mean. But if you look at the teams that go play in all these bowl games, almost all of them are happy to be there.
Yeah.
All of the kids have fun doing it. The fans that travel enjoy it. It's a reward for a season, and these kids work so hard, and they get an education, but they don't. This is where they get some of the fruits of that labor, and it's a fun trip. Most of them want to be where they're going, and the gifts and everything. So I think the bowls are still great for them, but maybe fans get too focused on the playoff and the top of the tier. But if you watch all the bowl games like I do, you see that so many of these schools and teams are happy to be at the bowl games they're at.
Yeah, and I think that's gets lost a little bit. I think, too, because you look at the NCAA tournament, you look at how teams come in and are seeded and how you have them, you have like those matchups like you mentioned, SEC, Pac-12, it could be SEC, Mountain West, it could be whatever like that. I think that's what fans would love to see the bowl system being. It's just not going to be that way, because of the fact that there are so many bowl games, because of the fact we have some lower tier bowl games that I just don't think conferences want to send their team to because they feel like the matchup maybe isn't going to work out as well. So again, I think that's why fans kind of get a little disappointed. But still, I think the playoff has done an amazing job so far. I think it'll continue to do the amazing job until they find something else that they can replace it with.
And now we're going to start a new segment. We're going to look at exit polls by voters from what football team they cheer for. I'm just kidding.
We haven't established how useless all that polling is.
We're doing exit polls based on college football fans that voted when their teams are at home. Matt, great show. It was fun. I think we made up for the week being how it is. And more fun to come. You can catch us every Wednesday at 3:30. Get us your Twitter questions throughout the week. For Matt Murschel, I'm Brant Parsons. Thanks for watching us at OrlandoSentinel.com. Those exit